Thanks for the organizers of this great event, this symbolic march. A march, first of all, it's a march for love. We're a group of lovers. Lovers of who? Lovers of this great man, this saintly figure. 1400 years ago. Imagine that. My dear friends, my neighbors here in the great city, historic city of Princeton, we're commemorating and honoring a man 1,400 years ago. Who would do such a thing if it wasn't for love? Love for what? Love for the ideals that this saintly man stood for. My dear friends, my citizens in the city of Princeton, just Google it. Go to www.standwithdignity.org. Google Imam Hussain, Hussein. Google Zainab, Zaynab. Just a couple of clicks, and you'll see why we're here. What is this all about? Yes, 1400 years ago, this man stood for the values that we all strive for. The values of freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, standing up for social justice, standing up to reform our communities. Oh boy, we need to reform our communities. 1400 years later, and yes, we suffer from so many ills in our society, from the breakdown of family values to inequality amongst us, to lack of social justice, to the harm that we humans elicited against the environment that we live in, and so much more and more. This man stood for so much, and all he said was no against the oppressor of his time. He said, no, leave me alone. I'm not gonna sanctify that government, the tyrant government of that time that wanted to oppress people. He said, no, I'm not gonna give you that validation. Just leave me alone. But the government of that time would not leave him alone. He left with his family, companions, and his children. He left for the holy city of Mecca to do the pilgrimage. And when he got there, he found out they're out to shed his blood. And so he left yet again, and he went towards Iraq, towards the followers who asked him to come, and they promised him to give sanctuary. But unfortunately, my dear friends, as we the lovers all know, but our neighbors may not know, because of the silent majority who stood and watched this saintly figure, who is a symbol of standing against oppression, they stood and watched his slaughter, the slaughter of his children, the slaughter of his companions, and then after that, what happens? The captivity of his women and children. Imagine on a hot day like this, nothing can compare to the heat of the desert of that time. For days upon days, these women and children were taken in chains from town to town, from city to city, paraded in the heat of the desert, through Iraq, into Syria, into Lebanon, and back into Syria, to the capital city of Damascus, to the court of that oppressor. Imagine that. And then what happens? Lady Zainab, the sister of the saintly figure. Again, Google it, my dear friends, my citizens in Princeton, and you will find out for yourself who this great lady, the sister of this saint, Hussain, that we're all here gathered and honoring today. This great lady stood up against that tyrant in his court, in his face, and told him, no to your oppression. And at the end, he had to release them because this tyrant of that time, Yazid, Y-A-Z-I-D, Google him, you'll learn that tyranny has been there all along from that time and before that time until today and until the end of time. But the silent majority, unfortunately, my dear friends, that silent majority allowed for the oppression of Imam Hussain, this saint, for the oppression of this children of Imam Hussain, for the oppression of Lady Zainab, the sister of Imam Hussain. It's that silent majority that sits there on the sidelines, watches people get oppressed, the rights of people getting trampled upon, and they remain silent. They don't stand up for that truth. They don't stand up for that justice. So we are gathered here today, yes, 1400 years later, 40 days after the massacre of the day of Ashura. So 1400 years later, and 40 days after the commemoration of the massacre of the 10th of Muharram in Ashura. You look overseas right now as we speak, as we are standing here today in this hot weather, you'll find millions upon millions of lovers of this saint, Imam Hussain, walking for days and days, miles and miles, millions from all countries of the world, walking towards the city of Karbala in Iraq today. Again, a quick Google search, and you'll know what we are talking about. We're talking about a procession of love 1400 years later, but it's about the love for what this man represents. He represents everything that all humans look for: truth, morality, justice, everything that we were hanging out here, dignity, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. No matter what your socioeconomic class is, no matter your gender, no matter your religious background, your ethnicity, all people are equal in the eyes of God the Almighty. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all those who participated today with us. And I bid you the greetings of Islam, the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.